All right, we'll call to order this special council meeting for Monday, August the 16th, 2021 at 5:03 p.m. Moving into our agenda, roll call and certification of a quorum. I can certify we have a quorum present. We have members Perez, Little, Camcar, Carbone, and Orlando present in the chambers. We have member Mayor Pro Tem Hernandez online. Member Owens had notified me he will probably miss the first meeting. He's trying to get here for the 6:30 meeting. So with that, we'll move forward in our agenda. Citizens' comments. Madam Secretary, we didn't receive any comments for this 5 o'clock meeting, correct? Okay. And moving to new business, we are going to switch 1 and 2. Our committee's chairman is stuck in some traffic. So since we have a second item all around utility billing, we're going to move forward with item number 2 first. And when Mr. Sabo gets here, then we can conclude that, and it's probably the right timing as you get through. So with that, we're going to move to item number 2, and that's the utility billing UB quarterly update on process and procedural work. And with that, we'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. With that, ask Ms. Massey on behalf of our UB team to give her update. Ms. Nancy.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Good evening, Mayor and Cole and Council. It's a continuation regarding utility billing. So please, I'm going to present the utility billing fourth quarter. And the last time we had a quarterly review was in May of this year. Tonight's agenda includes a background, 3230 plan progress, current progress, special projects, follow-up from past discussions, and future goals. Successfully, 3230 plan remains on track with current arrearages shown 45 to 54 days in the red boxes, and to attain the 10 to 15 day period read date to bill date as illustrated in the green boxes. Background. In January 2020, the annual audit reported of the fiscal year 2019 in arrearage, more than 70 days in billing. In February and March of 2020, Council discussed options, and in April of 2020, the 3230 plan was adopted. The first billing was August of 2020. Raftillis was awarded the RFP to review UB processes, and with their final report presented to Council in December of 2020. In January of 2021, the UB Ad Hoc Advisory Committee was appointed, and later in May, Meter Subcommittee was formed. During this time, the 3230 plan successfully progressed from 78 to 45 arrearage days, and staff worked jointly with the ad hoc committees. Shown earlier, the 3230 plan remains on track from the first billing, August 2020, to current. The current arrearage varies between 4 billing cycles from 45 to 54 days to attain a 10 to 15 day period from read date to bill date. Each billing cycle has 12 bills a year with the exception of 2 known issues. From the approved 3230 plan, the 2 issues are still known since the 3230 plan was laid out. They are 2 due dates in the same month and 2 bill dates in the same month, and all 4 have different billing periods. For 2 dates in the same month, as like the 2 bill dates, the billing periods for each of the 4 bills are different. 2 due dates in the same month are 30 days apart, and for this, staff recommends no change. For 2 bill dates in the same month, staff recommends not to assess the monthly fees, solid waste and applicable mud, to the second bill date, as well as not to assess base charges to the second bill date. This encounter occurs twice in the plan. This year, cycle 14, bill dates October 1st and October 31st. And next year, with cycle 11, bill dates August 1st and August 31st. It's important to note that unlike inactivating a fee, like solid waste and mud, implementation will be manually intensive not to assess base charges because the billing software does not account for a $0 as applicable in the tier amount. This will be impactful benefit to 22,600 accounts. Current progress, utility billing consists consistent of continuation of the staff contacting the top 50 usage accounts per billing cycle from each meter reading date. This is an increase of contacting 25 accounts. A tracking metric indicates, as recommended by Rautilis, as well as illustrated on the city's website. Recently updated the rate page to a simpler format, which included a link to the adopted fee ordinance as a source reference. Continue weekly and quarterly updates to the CMO and to council. In good faith and understanding, Section 30 of the UB ordinances were updated from 10 years ago to the current practices. Regarding Ordinance 30-39, when payment due, current verbiage is payment is due 20 business days from the bill date. For clarification, staff recommends modifying the ordinance to state the payment due on or before the 24th calendar days after the bill date. And to that end, the bills would be due on the 24th calendar day unless the day falls on a weekend or a city holiday. Then the due date is the first business day after the 24th calendar day. The modification will enable staff to remain on course with all processes for the 3230 plan. Continue with current progress. Since November of 2020, staff has tracked and externally illustrated the following recommended tracking metrics by Rautilis: number of customer service interactions by type, both email and phone calls. From the chart, staff successfully responds to over 3,000 phone calls monthly, from account information to payments, and moreover, staff successfully processes over 38 phone calls in July and over 4,000 phone calls in June. Another tracking metric is the average minutes per customer service call. To track the average duration of a customer's calls to ensure the customers receive timely and prompt service, addressing their needs swiftly. This metric is one of the indicators in the AWWA utility utility benchmarking performance management for water and wastewater. It's important to note that the AWWA call center industry standard for average handling time is 6 minutes and 10 seconds. With 7 customer service reps and 2 customer service rep 2s, averaging handling time is less than 5 minutes. Please consider that the CSR2s are also responsible for training and responding to escalated concerns from the CSRs. As stated earlier, staff continues with the Rautilis metric recommendation of tracking the number of customer service interactions by type. From the chart, I want to point to the increase of emails over the past year. Each one successfully resolved by staff, the same customer service staff that is better than the AWWA call center industry standard of average handling time with over 3,000 phone calls per month. Another Rautilis recommended tracking metric UB continues to track is the delinquency amounts. The chart reflects a 13% decrease in residential delinquency amounts from September of 2020 to August of 2021. The decrease in delinquency accounts includes the suspension of delinquency process over the past year. For special projects, staff has assisted with the meeting and responding to questions provided by providing reports to the Utility Billing Advisory Ad Hoc Committee and Meter Subcommittee. Later tonight, the committee will be presenting their final recommendations to council. In March, staff continued a pilot program with the additional 130 meter switch from AMR to AMI. Billing staff was trained on how to ascertain the meter readings in AMI for billing. Each one was field validated from the reading in AMI to an inline meter reading in the field. Successfully, the accounts were billed beginning in May. Next steps in the process of crawl, walk, run is to walk and switch up to 2,200 meters in cycle 11. By next week, 17% of cycle 11 will be switched to AMI. While cycle 11 is read and prepped for billing, the team will move on to cycle 14. From the AMI project, the map illustrates the new Town Lakes route switched August 3rd to AMI. As you can see, 99% of the meters have joined the network as each location reflects a blue dot. The one red dot signifies an endpoint that has not joined the network and will be field investigated. The purple dot denotes the CGR that gathers the data. And with no endpoints transitioning into the network, there are no orange dots on this map. And I'd like to thank the IT team for putting together and coordinating these maps and help us progress through the AMI process. An example of the orange endpoints transitioning, this map illustrates the new Ativa complex route switched August 11th, and in less than 12 hours, 57% of the endpoints in blue have joined the network. The red endpoints have not joined yet. However, the join percentage will steadily increase, which is a natural progression. In preparation of this presentation, the join percentage increased from 49% to 57% in an hour. Staff's looking forward to training on the customer portal, WaterSmart. Our kickoff meeting is tentatively scheduled for August 19th. And from the WaterSmart website, the customer portal will empower our customers with the ability to set leak and usage alerts, and high bill notifications prior to the end of the billing cycle. On the left are images of the customer portal. To point out a few features, it's a single place for customers to get context of their water use, check and resolve leaks, have a bill explainer for automated self-help for customers to identify and resolve concerns over high bills, and it'll be available both in English and Spanish. On the right is an image of the utility analytics dashboard for staff. This will enable staff to build custom lists for additional water use analysis or messaging for groups and customers, create and publish digital forms to gather customer information with ease. This is all in an effort to reduce staff time as well as better serve our customers. Follow-up from past discussions. Limited by New World capabilities, the retype function permits one default meter type. To that end, the retypes will be drive-by until all meters are switched to AMI. Then the function will be updated to AMI. Moreover, when a meter is unable to be read, staff manually inputs the type of reading, manual or estimated, within the billing process. Frontier Waste Solutions is the city's new solid waste vendor. Utility billing will continue working with Public Works to communicate via bill message and bill inserts, as well as there is a dedicated web page for the smooth transition. Utility billing staff are reviewing the customer database for outliers, for example, garbage accounts not in the city limits. These 50 accounts will be contacted via certified letter and phone call or email as notification their solid waste service will cease on October 1st and to set up solid waste service with a provider. Collaborating with Public Works, the new water meter webpage provides customers videos of how AMI meters work and how the meters are tested at the Badger factory before delivery, and a view of the new water meters. Moreover, the webpage provides an updated information and statistics regarding the city's meter testing program. The webpage is located on both the Public Works and water billing webpages and is labeled Water Meters. Future goals. Besides correcting account outliers, utility billing is to synchronize the meter reading and billing cycles, to have the set bill dates and, if possible, due dates for consistency and transparency. The billing schedule will be posted on the city's website for customers to plan and budget their payments. At a later date, the billing cycles will be expanded from 4 to 10 billing cycles for the current 40,000 accounts. From the current cycle sizes of 7,000 to 13,000 accounts, to better span of control of 35 to 4,200 accounts, geographically based. And in conclusion, the past year, utility billing is exemplified and will continue the mandate first brought to council in August of 2020 and updated from ad hoc. Despite turnover in all the group's leadership positions in 2019, the Utility Billing Division must continuously and proactively seek out ways to improve processes, both internally and externally, to provide exceptional services. Status quo, which is based on past practices, is not acceptable. Every customer-client interaction in utility billing is an opportunity for problem solving and systemic improvement, as well as rebuilding relationships with users. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Massey. I'll turn over to council for any questions or comments that you might have. Any? Member Carbone?
If you go back to slide 15 and 16, so can you explain like the process? So they start red, the endpoint joins and they turn blue, and then it transitions to the network? Or what's the final result we're looking for?
Thank you, Counselor. I'm going to refer this over to Mr. Robert Upton, since this is AMI.
Councilman Carbone, actually, when we start in the process, when we collect and establish the route that we're going to flip over, for example, switch over these meters as an example, as soon as they go through and collect all the existing information, and they then go back and switch them with the unit, and they will all be in red because they have not joined the network. As they're transitioning, communicating with the connected grid router in purple, they will transition to orange. That's where they're starting to register. That's a good slide right here. And then once they formally connect to the network, they turn blue. So if we go back to that slide 15, that's why you'll see that they are all blue at this time. And that process can take from instantaneous, within an hour as they call for it, and up to 5 days, maybe a couple more, depending on what interference may be in the way, or a car may be sitting on top of it just by fluke and block that, and then allow that period of time for us to be able to make that transition. And as you can tell, there is one that's in red right there, and staff goes out and investigates those single ones to see what the issue may be.
Okay, so the one we turned on first, Town Lakes, that's all but the 1 meter came online and we're doing good. So when we look at slide 16, it just needs more time.
Correct. That one was switched over on August 11th in the morning, and by the afternoon, as Ms. Massey was putting this presentation, and as the IT department who has provided us this information graphically, within that 12 hours of time, we had over 57% join.
Okay. And so for these that are already connected, when will they be tied into the new interface so the ratepayers can see the data?
If you're talking with regards to the WaterSmart program, where they can start seeing that, we start and kick off that transition with WaterSmart on Thursday this week. So we'll be building those platforms on Thursday. They project about 60 to 90 days.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I did have one. Could you go to slide 11 real quick? Right there. Trying to understand what the 115 on 7/21, the 115 terminations. What does that mean?
Those are customers that contacted us to terminate their service.
Okay.
That's what that is.
Okay. Just making sure it wasn't terminating of phone calls.
No, sir.
Okay. I was just making sure. All right. That was the only question I had as far as the slides. Remember Camcar?
Ms. Massey, can we just rehash a couple of things real quick? You said how many people call a month on average, plus or minus?
On the calls that we have, that I just put up the slide too, sir, for you. We have over 3,000 phone calls in a month.
It's like 1,000 a day. Even my Aggie math, that's 1,000 a day, right?
100 a day.
About 100 a day.
You are an Aggie.
That's the Aggie
Yeah.
math right there.
You are an Aggie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 100 people a day call, and they get their question answered in like 6 minutes, or they get
resolved in less than 5 minutes. Yes, sir.
All right. Then the 3230, is that working or not working based on the plan that was put together?
3230 is progressing and it is working. And the arrearage is slowly going down, sir. So it is functioning the way it is scheduled to do, sir.
Okay. All right, cool.
Any other? Member Perez?
When are we scheduled to come off of 3230? When was that scheduled to complete?
Cycle. I'm going to go back to the original screen that you have up here. And that shows you right here on this screen, sir, that cycle 11, 12, and 13 are scheduled to come off in December. Their bill dates are going to be their due dates are going to be in December and January there, in 2022. And then cycle 14 goes on until the spring of 2023.
Roughly between a year and a half.
Correct.
A 3-year cycle. So we're probably we can estimate we've collected about half the arrearage.
We collected, we're between 45 and 54 days out of the 71 to 78 days. I don't know about the arrearage, but I could tell you the time frame of it.
I mean, how comfortable are we with our ability to estimate what the arrearage is now? There's,
That I don't know, but I'll be happy to look into it. If we just get in writing, sir, we'll take a look at it.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right. Thank you, Ms. Massey, for a good report. I want to turn to item number 1, which is our Utility Billing Ad Hoc Advisory Committee to share their final report and recommendations to the City Council. First, and I'm not sure who's doing the presentation. I'm assuming Mr. Sabo is. Mr. Sabo, does the staff have the presentation? Or they should already have, okay, I just want to make sure that they've already got the, they've got their PowerPoint. Yeah, there you go. You can go ahead and start loading that PowerPoint, Josh, if you would. I want to thank the members of the ad hoc committee for the months that they have put into this, getting to their recommendations tonight. Mr. Sabo, thank you for your leadership with the group. I would also ask, as a part of this tonight, I know there's a couple of members that aren't present yet. I know the rain coming through Houston has slowed a few people down tonight trying to get home. So as part of that presentation, would certainly like to have members of the ad hoc group recognized and introduced tonight, so that way we can have all that. You have it, Josh? Okay. Apologize for that. I thought we had it loaded, ready to go.
Mayor, well, thanks for having us tonight. We appreciate it. Mayor, thank you for your, if you will, championing this as liaison between council and the committee. We have appreciated your commitment of time as well to our many meetings. And as a group, I think I want to start with saying that we're proud of the work that we've put in. Trust me on this, it's got less to do with my role and my leadership than it does with individual efforts of the committee, which I personally really appreciate. I don't know how many times we've met, but it's probably no less than 20. And then we had a subcommittee, for those of you who may not know, that met with staff on a number of occasions to kind of work through meter functionality, efficacy, transfer of data, and to try to vet some of the concerns had been expressed by citizens in that process. So we have produced a final report that is mirrored on the Reftelis report. So by now you've seen a couple of consultant reports. You've seen the Reftelis report. You've seen a response by staff to the Reftelis report. And then our work as we've gone through has at least attempted to be somewhat symbiotic with the work that Reftelis did and additive to that. And I think a reflection there is when we first read the Reftelis report, heard their presentation, explored with them a little bit some of the Q&A at our meetings that we had, we found their report to be pretty credible, to touch on a lot of the key issues. I think almost to a point we agreed with all their recommendations in the report. We had things to add on the individual recommendations, and one of the things that we noted, as is pretty typical for those of you who have sat on that bench before, These consultants would like to do more work for the city of Pearland, and therefore they don't want to be too damn pointed in their comments. And we candidly felt Raftellus fell a little bit short in some of those recommendations, and maybe our comments were couched a little bit more directly. And at times we even asked them to try to close the gap and add some examples or recommendations as to, what to do about a problem that they identified. So we certainly tried to do that in our final report. And if you haven't seen, how many pages were in the final report, Jimmy? 30. Jimmy really put yeoman's work in terms of pulling together all of the notes, our conclusions from the subcommittee meetings and such, and I appreciate and applaud his efforts for doing that. You all should have a copy of our final report. If you haven't seen it yet, you'll see that I think the consistency and the commonality with some of the Raftellus recommendations, but we'd ask you to step through that and make sure that you understand the depth of work that this otherwise untrained committee put in. So there's some overview comments that I'd like to share to kind of start off, and I think many of the committee members would like to take a minute or two and just kind of share their comments. One of the things that I had heard questioned at some point along the journey here was there consensus on our committee in terms of the way we felt, in terms of some of the recommendations that we made, and we felt like the easiest way to express that consensus was to let everybody have a minute to talk. Now, not everybody wants to talk in terms of their comfort speaking in front of groups, but the votes on the record should express the consensus I think that we've had on the committee. We had very little kind of disparate positions on things once we vetted it, and when we did have a disparate position expressed, we tried to explore that to the point where we could develop true consensus, not just a vote of 6-2, but true consensus on the committee. So in addition to the Raftellus report, we were asked by the charter to provide additional recommendations as they apply to utility billing systems, processes, infrastructure, and such. And so we attempted to do so in the spirit of that. And I'll ask you to remember that through this, we offer our recommendations really in good faith. We are a group of 8 citizens of the city of Pearland that were called together really to try to bring a citizen's perspective to a scenario. At times, I don't know that we felt like we were treated as customers or citizens in some of our staff interactions. And maybe sometimes we didn't act like the professionals that we claim to be either. But we did our best throughout these last 6 months. So one of the highlights or one of the overview recommendations that we want to talk about is this notion of a fostered culture of engagement, cooperation, continuous improvement. Having sat on city council, I can tell you that oftentimes city staff positions are seen as thankless in the marketplace. They get a lot of grief from a lot of people. They get a lot of questions from staff, and I certainly appreciate that sometimes that can foster a feeling of defensiveness and a lack of cooperation. At times with the changeover of city council, some positions at least once a year, every other year, the notion of continuous improvement can be lost. This is not like a company, right, where you've got a 10-year plan that people are judged against, albeit we've got strategic plans and such. But from a council and staff perspective, it's very difficult to foster continuous improvement. And I think that frustrated some of us at times. I mean, a lot of what we're talking about here in terms of the projects related to water and the gaps of communication and information that we all know about, much less perceive. We would like to think that there's kind of a multi-year over time look at making these improvements. Candidly, as a group, we're really, really glad to see the AMI progress that's been made. It was a little bit unclear as to when it was going to happen when we started our work, but it's heartening to know that there's been progress made on these projects, because we think this is a really important component of restoring, if you will, faith from the perspective of citizens and getting good information about what's being consumed and what's being built. So without being too pointed, we think there's clearly an opportunity for UB staff and others related to UB staff to maybe take a step further in terms of improving this notion of cooperation and professionalism and continuous improvement in the spirit of what we're talking about today. And I offer that again in good faith, not to be too critical. Second key point is that it should be clear, because you've heard it from us before, that we think 3230 needs to go away. It's a good 15 or 16, maybe 17-month run until 3230 is completed. That leaves, in our perspective, a gap in understanding of the true arrearage. As we've expressed before, we know that there's discontinuity in the understanding of what the arrearage is, to the point where we offer a recommendation of y'all bringing in a consultant to come look at the books and ask, is it recorded properly? Is the right basis being used to make the recordation? Is the right ordinance being referenced that was in time at the place? From our standpoint, it's that significant that we point out further that you should look at doing away with 3230 and resolving this in such a way that's palatable to everybody, but very clearly that there are opportunities for revenue to be enjoyed by the city of Pearland that are being missed. As an example to that, we'll point out we had a meeting on June 16th. One of the billers was present there, and we asked the question, if 3230 was gone and we were, quote, caught up, would you be able to identify amounts people receiving bills for zero consumption, which occurs every month, in a timely manner, and be able to make necessary corrections? And their answer was yes, very reasonably. So to make this point even more concise, with the availability of AMI, you've got citizens who can read their bill, can measure their consumption, staff can read the consumption for a certain account, right? And we can close the gap. And yet consciously, if we keep 3230 going, we're choosing to not close the gap for 17 or 18 months. Doesn't make a lot of sense to us as a group. Thirdly, we would offer that we think UB staff should look at a new and more proactive process as it relates to high consumption reads. We talked through a number of times what that might look like. Clearly, there's conflict when a customer, an account, calls in and say, hey, I got billed for something I shouldn't have gotten billed for. And there's a series of questions and experiences that UB staff has, I'm sure, that suggests that, hey, do you have a pool? Maybe did you fill your pool up and you forgot about it? Hey, could there be a leak? Were you running your sprinkler system? Whatever that is. All that's well understood. However, there are several circumstances, hundreds of circumstances, I understand it, where people have come forth and said there's no reasonable explanation to my bill being too high or too low in terms of consumption data. And we think there's a reasonable process that staff can go through with those people that give them the benefit of the doubt, that record the process to make sure that it doesn't happen multiple times and such, even as far as going to changing out a meter if that's necessary. And we're hopeful that AMI is going to be able to give people kind of real-time information to allow everybody to troubleshoot and to measure what's happening. But when you have examples that there's nothing going on and in the middle of the night a significant amount of consumption is being read, clearly something is off if the citizen is attesting to the fact that I don't have a pool, I don't have a leak, I've checked everything, and I can't tell that anything else is going wrong. There's got to be a kinder, gentler approach to this. The fourth point, as a competency, as a core competency in the organization, we feel like the notion and the approach to data integrity and analysis is too lean. We think there's lots of opportunities to analyze data in a more sophisticated manner, understanding basically what can be done with proper data analysis to make sure that we're looking at the data in the right way and trying to anticipate problems that we might have in either meter reads or the transition of data from the meter into the system, however that occurs. If we had that opportunity, we think we'd have a much better chance to vet out zero read accounts, number one, to improve the revenue opportunity, to make sure that everybody is being billed fairly, as well as the high consumption data as well. And we have examples of such. We'd be happy to respond to questions about that, show you those examples, talk through that, and even we'd be happy to work with staff if we felt like staff thought we were credible, which is a question. I've commented on AMI implementation. Again, couldn't come soon enough. It gives us the opportunity to really tighten the understanding between the account holder, the citizen, and the administrators of this program, and y'all as city council to really understand what's happening. Our subcommittee, I want to give some time to the subcommittee work that they've done. They have formulated what we think are material questions about the efficacy of the meters themselves, errors that have been noticed, errors within data collection, or at least inconsistencies in data collection, which ought to raise a red flag. The committee on several occasions asked for opportunities to speak with Badger and Itron, two key players in our data generation and collection process. We don't feel like our continued involvement in that process would be beneficial at this point, but we do think that at least laying out some of the data that we saw and expectations that some of this ought to be questioned or vetted should be a follow-up item that council might be curious about. And again, we've got plenty of examples should you need any. We also think that in general, as we look at the benchmarks offered by Raftellus, that the overall cost to administer the UB program through the UB department here is much higher than other cities, so especially peer cities. So as a group of citizens, we would question that expense as it goes to budget management, and recognizing full well y'all are in the middle of that. Right now, it's something worth reasonably asking about in terms of if our peer cities can administer this program for a certain amount of cost, why in some circumstances are we 50% higher than that? And then lastly, we feel like the right thing to do from a citizen's perspective is to hire a third-party auditor to come in and look at the arrearage, the basis that was used to calculate it, how it was calculated, how it was recorded, and do, as simply as we can put it, get it correct. If it's right, it's right. The third-party auditor can attest to that. And if it's not, we want it to be fixed and we want it to be fair. And our position through our calculations, as we've expressed before, is that the bases used for, or the assumptions used for the calculation were not. And we feel like we've got reputable people essentially saying the same thing, Raftellus being one of them. And while we may not agree, we think that because there's reasonable people disagreeing, why don't we hire somebody to break the tie? So with that said, I don't know, maybe Denise, you can kind of guide me through the next steps here. Do you think it's appropriate for the other committee members to say a few words, or? Okay, and then we'll open it up for Q&A and dialogue if needed.
Yeah, and certainly if you would just, go to the mic and the podium. That way it's all picked up so everybody can hear, but also give name and address for the record as well. And we appreciate each one of you. And we do understand not everybody is a public speaker, so we appreciate you. Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Patrick O'Day, 3410 Parkside Drive, Pearland 77584. I've been in the, whenever I first got asked to be on the committee, I was a skeptic. I was not, my sense was, I don't think there's anything really going on here. Maybe a 3230 needs to be looked at, but as far as meter consumption and that kind of stuff, because I've been in the utility business for, I'll say 24 years or 26 years because of child labor laws, but I've been in it my whole life. I had people come to the office to pay their water bills, and nobody's ever happy with their water bills. So you hear the discussions going on, and you're like, okay, let's see it. I can tell you 100% that I agree with everything that's written in the recommendation. I was surprised by some of the information that I saw. I was surprised by some of the reactions we got to questions we had. A leak, you don't pump water at certain times during the night, then it shuts off. Maybe if it's your sprinkler system, it's the same amount every night, every time it turns on. So I guess my biggest thing is I came in as a skeptic, but now I'm a believer. There certainly is an issue. It needs to be looked at to are your meters right? Because if they're not right, it doesn't matter everything else that you're doing here anyway. And I feel like that needs to be a process to go through the current testing process. I don't know that I really believe that it's accurate if you're not, because you have more than just a regular meter. Now we send somebody out to read the totalizer. You have several different parts that need to be tested with that meter. We had one that was tested good, put back in, still showed the same thing. When everything was replaced, now there's no more problems. So it's just, I think the city's losing out on some revenue because of it, either one way or the other. So either they're paying too much or the city's losing out of it and not getting what they're owed. So I think that everybody needs to be paid what's owed, and the city ought to get paid for what's owed. So again, that's what I will have to commend Jimmy Davis. He's done an absolutely fantastic job. The amount of information that he's gotten and the effort that he's put in is stellar. So I would put a lot of weight behind what he says and the information that he presented to us to where we could come up with our recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Smith, 13020 Imperial Shore Drive, Pearland, 77584. First thing I think I want to say is, with the possible exception of myself, the council did a great job putting the committee together. I obviously didn't have nearly the level of expertise in this genre that my fellow committee members had. But that being said, I like to think that I brought a little bit of different perspective to the proceedings. Want to say that, obviously I've been an attorney for a while, so I know adversarial proceedings and I know how both sides can get. I also know that usually the actual story is somewhere in between the two sides. So I just kind of want to put that out there as, I don't think anyone is casting blame. I don't think any of us are casting blame on anyone. This is a situation that we all kind of fell into, and we're trying to make the best of it. That being said, I think part of the reason that you guys put the committee together was to make that progress, to get to the end. And, whether we're there yet or not, I don't think we are. Every process, every system, every department can be improved. I don't care how good it is. And so I think my impression, and again, I go with my gut a lot, is that you have a lot of the pieces in place to make that progress. It's just kind of how we get there and how you decide to get there. And I think we've given you some options. I think staff's given you some options. Hopefully, in between the two is the sweet spot, and that's where we get. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for allowing me to serve on the committee, and I appreciate everything that you guys do.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Next up.
Hi, I'm Ralph King, 2805 South Galveston. I'm a retired geek, so y'all don't know me from Adam, but retired from Lyondell-Basell as principal advisor after 35 years. I was responsible for fitness for service worldwide for Lyondell-Basell when I retired. So I'm the engineer on the committee. Real important thing to know. Prior to the implementation of the new meters, the old meters would always fail low, could not fail high. All the systems and checks that were developed within the billing system were to catch low readings. Except now you have meters, new meters, that can read high. And with your own data indicates that roughly anywhere from 0 to 1 or 2 accounts per cycle are reading high. You've expanded the check from 25, thanks to Mayor Cole, as the emphasis. Now it's up to 50. What if you're the 51st? You didn't get anything. And the point is that the data validation is all set currently in the system at the default values. There's much better ways to validate the usage and to statistically indicate whether it's an outlier or not. And that is not being done. Now, it's bad enough that you may have some rather high accounts, but we even have some that are actually within relatively normal usages, except we're using 300-400 gallons at 2 o'clock in the morning for 2 retired people. And when we switch the meter, all of a sudden that goes away. So the values that are being implemented in the system are highly questionable at this point. And the reality of it is, everybody on the committee, including myself, Mr. Geek, aren't really fully functional in terms of trying to really resolve what is going on. Now, the city obviously bought a pig in a poke in some respects. Badger has a problem, I think. And that's how come we're recommending getting a technical meter consultant to work with the city and get to the root cause of the problem. And it may be that when one of them goes bad, you change it out, and you change out enough of them, the problem completely goes away because you got all good meters. But the reality of it is right now, that is highly, highly questionable. And unfortunately, as we continue to be moving toward getting a portal, but right now, I'm almost 2 months later, I get my bill, and I have no way of reconciling my usage to my bill because they're so far apart because of 3230. The fact that we even had to have a 3230 really has to call into question the competency of what has been going on. And the fact that we're going to take almost 3 years, going on 4 years, to resolve it also has to question the competency. And I can tell you, as citizens, I'm a new citizen of Pearland. I moved from Friendswood after Harvey to get out of the floodplain a little bit better. And I didn't know I was moving into this. When I opened my account, there was a man in front of me that was complaining that he had a 10,000-gallon water usage for his bill. And I told my wife, after watching that interaction of him have to go get a plumber and verify he didn't have a leak and everything else. By the way, 10,000 gallons on a trailer house is pretty obvious. I said, I hope that isn't boding well for what we're into. And yet I find myself addressing council. So I would ask you, if you want to bring back confidence of the citizenry in the process and confidence in our elected officials, I ask you to read carefully the report and take action. It has got to be resolved. If you don't, here's the reality. If you don't, you're going to be facing other consequences that you probably don't want to have. Because the reality of it is there is money involved. And at some point, somebody's going to get fed up enough, or enough of them are going to get fed up enough, that legal action will be sought. And I've honestly, truly, we've worked very, very hard to try to give you a pathway out of the woods here to avoid that and to reestablish confidence within the system. So we just ask you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. And Mr. King doesn't do himself service. He spent 35 years as a root cause analysis engineer. So it was his job to go in and find the root cause of a problem in a plant and find it yesterday, not take 6 months or 9 months or 2 years to find it. So, Mr. King, I appreciate your involvement here.
Hi, my name is Denise Hewitt, and I'm sure council all knows that I live at 3404 Blue Spruce Trail, 77581. So I guess I'm just one customer, maybe a little bit more proactive than some of the other 40,000 that you have. And lucky me, I'm one of 13,000 in cycle 11. And every time I see cycle 11 being like the guinea pig, I shudder because cycle 11 seems to be cursed for some reason. I'm not quite sure why, but if we could be cycle 12 for a while, that would be very nice. February 10th, 2020, I showed up, first time I ever spoke, to say, I have 2 water bills in the same month. We're retired. We live on a budget. What are we going to do about this? So now here I am. What's today, the 16th of August? The 20th of August of last year, so I'm 4 days shy, I've had my new meter. And it has been a real awakening for me, and I am thankful to have had the opportunity to participate on the committee because I felt I had a voice. I ask now that you be open to the information that you've received because Pearland, you have a problem. For those of you that don't know me, I was a program manager at CenterPoint Energy, and I was in the technical project management office and ran Tiger teams in addition to it on the 2.3 million digital meter implementation. So I had a little bit of maybe background and edge to it that maybe most of your customers don't have. So on 11/23, I asked for my first profile, and I looked at it and went, holy moly, what is this? Well, 2 old people using 300, 400, 500 gallons in the middle of the night. And my poor husband then started charting every time he got up in the middle of the night and how many times he washed his hands and how many times he watered a bush. And it's been insane for him. But he's still here 40 years later. I did 5 months of getting weekly profiles and looking at them. And we've had where in that 24-hour period, we might have 4 hours in our day. And this was kind of common, that we didn't use any water. 4 hours in 24 hours. It might be little, might be a lot, very unpredictable. I asked for our meter to be pulled and tested in January. They pulled it, they tested it, they brought it back in a month, 3 weeks, and said, it's 100.7% accurate. And I looked at my husband and I said, how does something get over 100%? Like, are they like an AP student in that or what? And he said, well, one went low and one went high. Something tested low, something tested high. Your average is over 100% accurate. Well, that made me have a lot of confidence, didn't it? Because that means it's, really, really accurate. So in looking at the way they were testing meters, I don't believe our testing procedure is robust enough. Because if our meter can come back as accurate, I'm telling you it wasn't. And the method that they're testing does not address looking at flow. It's not looking at whether or not the meter, when you call on the meter, it stops counting. We went on vacation last November, and we had no leaks. They were 0 until our cleaning lady showed up on Thursday. You could see the water she used. Then Friday, it went back to 0. So we have no leaks. We talk a lot about being customer-centric. I've had lots of conversations about, this isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right. I mean, you guys have heard me. You're tired of hearing me. I don't blame you. But never once was it, It wasn't until I asked for the meter to be tested, said I wasn't going to pay for it because I didn't feel I needed to. It took a direct conversation with Clay, and I thank you, Clay. You changed my meter. I'm now a happy camper, almost. I want you to kill the 3230. But on my meter, we're just 2 old people paying a bill, except I'm in cycle 11, the cursed cycle. So we had in February of 2020, we had the 2 bills, right? We had one last month. We had 2 bills, and I pen-paled all of y'all about it. That's pretty good for New York or all y'all. And then I just saw Nancy's where August of next year we're going to have 2 more bills. Guys, you're killing me. How can I get 2 water bills in 1 month? That's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. There are people out here, and I don't want to play poor mouth, and I won't do that to you, but we live on a budget. And if we aren't budgeting correctly, we're dipping into money we don't want to take out because I don't think you're deserving of it, but I don't think we should be penalized by it, right? But there are people out there who don't have that luxury. We have talked about individuals in our community. What was the 3230 going to do to them? You know, how do we get out of this? That's always thrown out there. But this is a perfect example of how you can harm people. You know, every cycle, at least you're, you know, kind of sharing it around the city. But the ice storm, I thank you, council, for the idea of getting relief. In that cycle, they had a problem in the reading. I was 1 day shy of my 28 days. But instead of just averaging 1 day and adding it to my bill, they gave me 33 days. Guess what it was? It was the day my house flooded. I got $20,000 worth of flooring that we've done that we're waiting for our insurance to reimburse us. Did I get any relief? No. The city knows about it. I called and said, I have the profile. Did I get any relief? No. Did I get any relief for all the months that you overbilled me when my meter was inaccurate? No. So if we want to talk about being customer-centric, those are the things that you've got to get off 3230. This poor group, they can't see. They're flying blind. I was watching the stats there, and I thought, you know, those are really good stats, but they're working with a rock. They have a computer system. They have no data. They have nothing that's up to date to help me when I want to call and ask about anything. So now that I have my new meter, I'm only allowed to get a profile once a month. So the first of the month, I email Miss Massey. Hi, Nancy. How's it going? Could you give me a profile, please? Just because I want to make sure. I've had 2 profiles since we've gotten our new meter and looked at it. I shouldn't have to do that. Like, I think I'm helping to pay for this AMI system, right? And so I should have access to that data. And Robert's saying, sounds like they're going to build in 90 days. Maybe we're all going to be able to look at it, except I'm not going to look at it till 2023 because I'm still on 3230. 3230 and AMI are not tied at the hip. You do not have to have AMI to get out of 3230. That's false. The committee worked with city staff, and we developed a plan. We collaborated. We negotiated our way all the way through this, and we came up with a solid plan to get us off 3230 with a minimum amount of impact to the city and a minimum amount of impact to the customers. And you want to talk about revenue? Tell me how much I owe you. I'll write you a check. Give other people 90 days, 6 months, no penalty, whatever their payment needs need to be. It'll sure roll in a whole lot faster than 2023. So if you want to be customer-centric as you claim to be, you need to understand you have a problem. Your meters have some accuracy issues. Your customer support people have no data to help your customers, and your customers are suffering. They don't know whether they're paying the right amount. I knew I wasn't paying the right amount. I feel fairly comfortable with what I've paid the last couple of months, or the 3 bills that I've had in 2 months, might I add. So I just want to state that keep the customer in mind. Don't get lost in all this. 3230 is not tied to AMI, and I ask you to take mercy on your customers. I've been your customer for 38 years. I'm asking you to get me off 3230. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hewitt.
I am Julie Ward, 2302 Harbor Pass Drive. My apologies for my tardiness today. Harris County is experiencing pretty bad flooding right now. Yeah. But I do want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to sit on this committee. I think it was very eye-opening for me. I think originally I did not think the issues and the problems were as significant as they have been found to be. I was a supporter of 3230 coming on this committee. I think after the thorough discussions that were had, after seeing all of the data, challenging every opportunity I could, everything that came up, to really press the matter and the issue, to try to find any outlying information. How can we think about this differently? What can we do differently? And I think as I learned more, I would agree that 3230 probably is not the best path moving forward. I think that I know that I have read the reports, though I was not here for the presentation. I do agree with everything that is in the report and has been said. So that's all I have for today, but I'm happy to discuss, my opinions further if anybody is interested in hearing those.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Ward. Anyone else? Oh, Mr. Davis. Ms. Jen, you're not going to talk? Certainly understandable. Certainly understandable.
Jimmy Davis, 5004 Collinsville Street, Pearland, 77584. I want to start off thanking a few staff members. This has been a long journey. We've interacted with a lot of people, but there's a few people that stood out to me, and I want to say thank you. Your communications director, Josh, outstanding. The way he carried himself, the way he thinks, the way he tried to work with us and engage in dialogue and to actually have continuous improvement, that was refreshing. Mr. Rivera, Meter Services, very honest, open, insightful gentleman that I could ask him a question. He would just share the information, was very helpful. If a promotion comes up, I recommend you promote that man. Jennifer Quiroga, she's in utility billing. Jennifer just shared a lot of information. She's just a biller who wants to do her job better. And she's committed to providing exceptional service. And we were able to ask Jennifer questions, and she was very open. She was very honest. And Jennifer was the one when we asked, because we're talking about data validation and all the meters that are returning 0 reads, but they're not being caught. And we asked her, if 3230 was gone tomorrow, would you be able to validate this? And people that are using water, but the meters, there's a glitch, something's happening with the communication device and it's saying no water was used. Would you be able to catch that and validate it? And could we bill a customer properly? She said, yes. I appreciate the candor and the honesty. I also want to thank the committee, because y'all know me. I'm a thorn in most of your side. You're tired of hearing from me. That's why I went last. I was like, maybe we'll run out of time and there won't be time for me. Because I want you to hear from everyone else, more importantly, because I tell you what, each of these members, I've had conversations one-on-one and as a group. I've learned a lot. And I went into this thinking I had my ideas, but what if I was wrong? I'm always open to saying I'm wrong. Show me the facts. Show me a different perspective. You show me something that makes me challenge the way I'm thinking, I'll change the way I'm thinking. I'm very open-minded. Follow the science, follow the data. If it says you need to change your hypothesis, then you change it. I gained a lot of information from our committee members. They're really helpful. They helped me grow. And I was like, maybe I'm just that one crazy guy that's saying there's a problem and maybe there's really not. And I went into this saying, what if we go through this and I'm wrong? I'll stand up here and say, I'm wrong. But through the process, through the digging, through the work, through the countless hours, we all agreed the data is what it is. We started off with 8 people. Some were skeptics. You had a supporter of 3230. You had a guy that's been in the water business most of his life who thought everything was fine. Our report, y'all said you wanted consensus of 6. So 25% of the committee could disagree. You could have 75% approval. We had 100%. That is no small measure. And I think that points to the validity and reinforces our recommendations. There are ongoing culture issues. We have seen that continuous improvement and trying to just work with staff to understand the information, to work together to figure out what's the best path forward. Asking for information and being told that after the committee started meeting, staff decided to go destroy a bunch of billing records. That was a little surprising. There are ongoing billing issues because of 3230. We're not going to be caught up 16 to 19 months. That's how much longer this is going to go on. 16 to 19 months. Now, staff has said when AMI is operational, residents are going to be able to get on an AMI basis, that it's going to be a monthly meter read. Well, I'm one of those people. I only know about it because I've been really involved. Most of Pearland hasn't been. They don't know. As Raftelis pointed out, any rate increases are not going to be proportionate if you have some people paying 384 days of water a year and some people paying 365 days of water a year. I understand that on budget, it's been said that cessation of 3230 would cause financial harm to the budget. I was hoping he was going to be here because I actually want to challenge that. Because if a budget is for 365 days of water consumption, regardless if it's billed afterwards, then you're going to book 365 days of water consumption revenue in a year, whether you bill for 384 or not. The arrearage. There's been a lot of dispute over the arrearage. Data received and analyzed, I put around $4.5 million extra in the arrearage. Reason being, and this was, I'm thankful to the CFO, who unfortunately isn't here, in a memo she produced, I believe it's May, where she identified how the arrearage is calculated. I'm cycle 12, guys. In fiscal year 2019, City of Pearland read my meter 14 times at the end of the year. So when you build your final bill in September, that was my 12th bill for the fiscal year, and there were 2 outstanding meter reads for fiscal year 2019 that had base charges booked. You put on your financials, you were charging all of cycle 12 for 14 monthly charges. You booked 14. Now, there's concern about base charges and the statement that, y'all have seen the emails. Base charges are not monthly. They're volumetric. Okay, because City of Pearland chose to assign a volume to a monthly charge that when you look in the ordinance, The ordinance says it's monthly. It's a monthly charge. City chose to assign a volume to it. However, if it's volumetric, and I thank you, Ms. Hewitt, for pointing this out. This went right over my head until today. Next year, you've got cycle 11. They're getting 2 bills in a month. What's staff's statement? Well, if it's the second charge in the month, we're not going to charge the base charges. Why? Because it's monthly. But yet when we talk about people having 14 meter reads and every one assessed a monthly charge, it says, well, but it doesn't matter because they're billed different months. Well, which is it? Is it monthly in one situation and volumetric in another? Seems a little contradictory. It's monthly. And the fact is, that's part of the challenge with what's owed, with determining what's owed. I've been here since February 2013. March 2013, I got my first water bill. Every month I've paid a bill with a base charge. I can tell you, when I go to find out what I owe and get caught up, if you try to hit me with a base charge, I'm taking you to small claims court. And that's going to be the start of what may turn into class action. Because I have paid a monthly fee every month. And when you try to assess me 2 in a month, you're going to have a problem. Section 30-39 issue. Poor cycle 11. Man, I pity y'all people. I'm like, they must hate y'all. Current language. Changed in March. All bills shall be due within 20 business days. Pretty straight language. 20 business days. Since that time, poor cycle 11 had 2 bills due in July. 1 bill was assessed 18, was due 18 business days after, and the second bill that was due July 31st, 17 business days. We cut their bill, their due date, 1 day, just so we could get 2 payments in a month. Why? Just follow the 20 business days. Now, the new language, 24 calendar days. That's what they're going to want you to follow. But if it falls on a weekend or a holiday, it's the next business day. So I stick with 20 business days. Why change it? It's consistent. You know, my August bill, 24th calendar day, would be a Saturday. So it would be due the next Monday because we operate on business days. There's no need to change it. You messed up. And y'all, I'm thankful to the CFO who shared they're going to be issuing credits to residents for late fees. Because one of my neighbors reached out to me about her high bill, and we discovered, y'all are aware of it. She's had 3 months of late fees assessed, and every bill was paid on the 20th business day. But on either the 17th to the 19th business day, City of Pearland slapped her with a late fee. $37 and change. She's going to get a credit like others should. I applaud that. I'm thankful that staff is doing it. It's the right thing. There's no need to change language, especially since it's going to go to business days anyhow. Couple things from the staff presentation. I'm glad they got to go first. Slide 3. It's a nice chart. It shows meter read, date, bill date, when it's due. Why is that not available to the public? Well, we have question 5. What do my bill dates look like? We don't have that. Why don't you share that to the public? That would be nice to know and for us to see so people can look at it and budget. Because, you know, people live on budgets. The 2 due dates in 1 month. I've watched all the presentations. 2 bills in 1 month have been addressed, but I've never found a presentation where they address 2 due dates in the same month. I would ask Ms. Massey, tell me where that was addressed. Show me that presentation. And finally, the high consumption. Y'all have heard. I personally have, my computer I probably have from residents, they've shared probably 50 or so meter profiles from 50 different residents. I've looked at meters. The number of people, 2 specifically, that I've worked with a lot, that their meter was tested, that have that crazy consumption for unexplainable times. And while their meter's gone and the temporary meter's in place, no consumption like that. Now, I suppose some might argue, oh, well, they just changed their habits for 3 weeks to pull the wool over the city's eyes. No, I don't think they're that slick. I don't think they're that dishonest. You got 39,000 meters deployed. 1% would be 390. That means 99% are good, and that's awesome. Nobody's going to argue 99%. If you're one of those 390, means a lot. Sucks to be you. So let's just take a more customer-centric approach. And finally, I want to point out, Raftellus highlights there are cities that have water advisory boards. Some of our neighboring cities have them. Y'all need to pursue it. I've been saying that for a year and a half. It's fallen on deaf ears. I hope y'all will actually listen to it. It's not unprecedented. It is common. So let's just look at having that. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer questions, share information, share the data, or anything I've said. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Sabo, does that conclude, I guess, staff, or not staff, but committee's presentation? All right. Yeah, I want to thank, again, every member of the committee for the hours that you took in this. You know, we all have this report, and there's a couple of things from the council's perspective that we're going to need to do. I also want to have the opportunity for you guys to ask questions, be it staff or the committee, to this evening as well. I know we do have another meeting shortly after, but I do want to allow some time for some questions. One of the things, and I think it was back in January that we received the Raftellus report then, and it had some 16 recommendations in it, and we deferred any actions on those recommendations, even though there's a few of those recommendations that staff has been moving forward with, just because they were the right things to do to continue to move forward. But we've never fully accepted, you know, that report. We've never fully acted on those recommendations, and we wanted to wait for the Citizens Ad Hoc Group to finish with their recommendations before we did. We obviously, I don't think we'll have time to do that for like next Monday, but I think we need to take some time to make sure that we fully act on the Raftellus report as well as the committee's recommendations. What I don't know right offhand, and this will be a question to staff, I know staff had, out of the 16 recommendations, there were, you know, a number that they took no opinion at all on. There were a number that staff wholeheartedly agreed with, and there were a handful that they disagreed with, and then the 3231, you know, had their own thoughts and ideas. And I don't know how that recommendation matches up with the staff or the committee's recommendations on each individual one of those. I can go through the book and do it, but would probably be good to know how all of those align. Because my guess, looking at it, is there's going to be a fair amount of agreement on some of them, and then there's going to be a handful that there's going to be a disagreement. Staff's going to take a position, the committee's going to take a position, and we need to take a position, okay? The committee, just like staff is aware, we take up recommendations from staff and don't always follow it. We take up recommendations from the committee and may not follow them. Ultimately, it's up to this body to make a final rendering of what we're going to do to move forward. And so we will need to do that in the course of our actions. I would hope we could have that in front of us, maybe the first meeting in September, which I think is September the 13th. Having a meeting next Monday, I don't think we'll have time to fully digest this, as well as making sure where we agree and where we don't disagree, or where we disagree, making sure that we're clear on where we have to make these decisions. So I want to put that on the table, because we do need to dispense of the recommendations at some point. We need to give you our thoughts on those recommendations, and it needs to be done in a timely manner, as well as the Raftellus report. I will say this, and I'm going to open it up for questions. I do believe, as a member of the public, I spoke out against the 3230 plan as a member of the public. I did not agree that that was the best course of action. I always believed that every member of the public should pay for the water that they've used. They should get a bill, and we should figure out a way to make that budgetary impact as less painful as possible. In other words, if somebody needed a payment plan to pay off what they owed in arrears, give some reasonable time to make that payment. And I do want to ask, from the committee's standpoint, that is what you're talking about when doing away with 3230. We're not talking about just wiping a certain amount of payment just off the books. Making sure that we reconcile what is owed. Here's what you owe for these now 45 days. Is that correct? Yeah, somewhere,
45 to 54 days, sorry.
In that ballpark. And so here's what you owe for that. And you can do a one-time check, or we could do that over whatever we come up with, a payment plan that our system will allow. So we're not writing off. I know out in the social media world, there's people who have said, you just need to true it up, and whatever's owed just needs to go away, and city needs to eat that. That is not what the committee is recommending at all. Okay. And so I wanted to make sure that I put that on the table for to make sure that anybody out there that thinks you guys want to, millions of dollars of write-off, that is not the intent of the group. Yes, Ralph.
Is everything.
Right.
There is a period of annual water consumption that arrearage is at a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And we attempted to try to get that recommendation to you when it was at a minimum. Right now it's at a max. So, the reality of it is if you do away with 3230, and by the way, we're sitting here in August, it's going to be September, October. The peak's going to go down here by the end of September anyway.
Yep.
And so you want to hit it when the weather and the supporting precipitation minimizes that arrearage.
The good news, it rained almost every day in July.
It did.
So may have helped that. With that, I want to turn it over to council. I know some of you guys have some questions or comments. Member Orlando, start with you.
Sure. I just have a quick one to start off. First, appreciate the work of everybody on the committee and realize how long this has taken. So thank you guys all for taking a hard look at this. In consideration of how much work has gone into this, I guess just wanted to get an opinion from staff. As has been mentioned, we're also in the middle of the budget right now, so want to make sure all the appropriate stakeholders from UB, from finance, from engineering are able to give each of the recommendations the due consideration that they deserve, and get back a response. And kind of what I think the mayor said that I agreed with was it'd be nice to see kind of a table of this is what Raptellis's take was, this is what the City of Pearland staff's take is, and this is what the committee's take was. I think that would be really helpful for us in making a decision, but am cognizant that we're in the middle of a budget season. So I guess want to make sure that we are able to give full analysis to these recommendations. What does a good timeline look like from your perspective on that?
So, trying to break it down a little bit, I think, I heard we do want to bring a ordinance amendment forward, and I think we're still trying to tee that up for at least first reading or discussion on a Monday as it pertains to the 20 days that's been cited, and we flagged with council earlier. And then, as you said, there's as the mayor pointed out, if you will, acceptance or acknowledgement, receipt of the Raptellis report. And I think we could have that summary table updated, in September. But as for, going through the whole report to the committee and trying to respond to that, I think that would, like we've always said, we don't want to do anything that causes more problems than we expected or unintended consequences, whatever the phrase would be. But I would, if we could have, 60 days, something like that, to report back on that, I think that'd be more complete and realistic just with everything else going on.
Yeah, it's just a priority to me to make sure that we get this right and that we review it thoroughly, and understanding that we have a limited bandwidth with our staff and in the middle of a very busy season. So I'll defer on that, but again, really appreciate all the work and look forward to seeing the in-depth analysis and kind of comparison between the different folks that have reviewed this. So thanks, everybody.
Yep. Thank y'all for putting in all the time and all the thoughtful comments tonight. I'm in favor on what you say, September 13th, on that agenda item. It's a big report, but it's condensed down pretty good. I think there's 4 main action items. The big one is the 3230. And so, yeah, I mean, staff can read it and you don't have to have perfect answers or solutions to it, but I think we need to dispose of it. We've kicked this down the road for quite a while now. I mean, where I stand is there's the 4 recommendations, and I think where I thought it was going to head, this confirms it. And I mean, we've got eight citizens out there that some were skeptics, some weren't, and they all came together. When's the last time we all came together as a council on something that's contentious? So that says a lot, and I do think we need to move forward.
Good comments. Remember, I'll come back to Hernandez online. Remember Camcar?
Chairman Sabo, can I just have a couple questions? I just want to know we have to be on the record and all that. Just really briefly, first of all, I want to thank the body, the committee, for working very hard. People are putting their time in. People have families, taking time away from their business, their family, their personal interests. As somebody who has 3 kids under 4, every hour counts, especially my hours, so to speak. And so just thank you guys for doing that. I just want to make sure I'm encapsulating what the thought process is. I had a very different thought process, and I think that got recapsulated here differently. The body and the committee is not asking for debt forgiveness.
Not in any way. I think the caveat to the notion of an end to 3230 is we do question the arrearage calculation, right? So that breaks down as a multiple of each individual account's arrearage, right? Or the other way around. So with that caveat, our suggestion basically is that whatever is owed to the city is paid.
And in this case, sooner than later.
Sooner rather than later, we think is beneficial as long as it's not detrimental to an individual account holder. And again, the staff has shared with us in the past that whether at their recommendation or at your behest, they have taken a friendlier approach to things like late fees and terminations and all that. And that's the right spirit, we think.
Okay, great. You had 20 plus meetings. I'm trying to understand everything. I didn't go to these meetings. All right, 15 meetings. Did the financial advisor of the city attend any of these meetings?
Who do you mean vice financial advisor?
John Roebuck, the guy who sells our bonds.
No.
Okay. The only reason I'm asking is this Clay, Frazier, is this revenue bonded? Do we owe this money to somebody?
The budget, as we just went through on Saturday and before, is a big chunk of the enterprise operation is capital improvements, which are debt funded over long term. Yes.
The only reason I say that is the water rates right now, before we get to go chop it up, are 9%. My fear is, one way or the other, if we make a change, that changes, there's a ripple in the lake, right? And so we make a change here and it goes that way. And in understanding that implication, we need to understand that. Does that mean getting more revenue in and the rate goes down? Or does that mean we're foregoing revenue or we lose revenue and the rate goes up? That's one of the items that very much was impressed upon me, is that they raised the rates because we don't have enough revenue. Maybe it would be because we're not collecting or we're not collecting enough. I don't know. What is very bothersome to me is nobody has the answer on what's outstanding, whether it's on our side of the fence or y'all's side of the fence. And at the end of the day, this is all we. It's all apparently, it's all we, but you know, I'm trying to get to the point. And so I think that there's a sensitivity around that, and the jostling around that, I think, is important to understand. Do I want somebody to be able to just cut the check? That's a favorite Camcar motto, cut the check, CDC. We can just cut the check and get on with this, great. For some people who cannot because we're on a budget, we need to be passionate and compassionate about that and resolve that in a satisfactory manner. I just want to make sure here, for the sake of discussion, the body and the committee reviewed the Olson & Olson report and the Raftelis report and didn't have significantly, there wasn't like this gigantic variance on any of those reports and their findings.
To generalize, no, we did not. And in addition to that, I think it's important to note, we read staff's response to the Raftelis report, right? Which was somewhat detailed, and we spent a lot of time with staff's response. And tried to kind of work in between.
Yeah. Chair, the thing that I have is people do make mistakes in their errors, and we have to fix them. If it's equipment errors, I don't do equipment. These people do equipment, but we need to get those right. And to the point that was made, 390 or 490 or 690 or doesn't make a difference. If it's more than two, we need to go and fix that. You know, Mr. O'Day's leaving. He was very, very persuasive to me. I don't see him on the internet. He's never yelled at me on the internet. He is a dispassionate, in my mind, third party. And for somebody at that kind of level of credibility, he's not doing this for fun. Right. So I give a lot of credibility to that. And so I just want to point out that when the internet asked us, this body, and I didn't enact the Olson & Olson report, I didn't vote on the Raftelis report, the committee was forced on me. I got to know, and the body said, here's the people, and you get to decide yes or no. I said yes. So all that being said, I feel that the council as a body has been responsive to a certain extent. We obviously have to finish that off. But what I would tell the staff, equipment issues isn't really a good excuse. We have to get better on that. The gentleman, or no, the 100.7, 100.7, that's just not a good answer for 100.7. That answer sucks. So we have to get better on that, but I'm happy that there's 99% is over in this box, but we need to work on this box over here. I would tell you, to member Orlando's point, I do agree we ran into this rashly. Somebody got fired, and then they were doing it the old way, then we changed it, and now we're at 3230. My concern, for the record, is we do 4 different ways in the course of 24 months or 28 months, whatever that number is now, and that we got into this because somebody made a stupid mistake. And I just don't want to rush into another one. I want to be considered. And so if the patience is with the board, I would like to take more than the time that we have, considering that budget is consuming the next 4 weeks of this body's life. But if you guys are not for debt forgiveness and are for what you say, which is if you owe it, pay it, we'll figure out how, but if you owe it, pay it. I don't have fundamentally a problem with that. What I do is, are we going to shake the snow globe too fast? Not saying we shouldn't shake the snow globe. I just want to do it in a thoughtful and considered manner, considering that how we got here was not thoughtful or considered and was not communicated. So anyways, thank you to the body. I appreciate everybody here. Mr. Sabo, I think you've done a masterful job. It's been a lot of meetings, and I feel that things are moving in the right direction, and the data is helpful. So thank you, guys.
I think Mr. Davis had a response to part of the question just that way.
Two little things, just to clarify. I believe, Councilman, you asked if we reviewed the Olson and Olson report and the Raftels report. Olson and Olson report was not within our charge, and we did not review the Olson and Olson report.
Appreciate that clarification.
Secondly, on the thought about how to deal with the payments and everything, one of the things that we discussed early on is there is a liquidated damages with Itron on installing $100 and some odd thousand. I would suggest council consider putting that aside. And if there are certain old people that if you go the route of saying, just pay what you owe, and there's a little old lady that just can't pay that $40, maybe we have a pool of money there that we could say, this can be considered on a case-by-case basis for people, especially on fixed income. Let's be considerate of them.
Very good. Member Little?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you. You guys did an outstanding job. Great report. Jimmy Davis, you're right. You've been a thorn in our side for a while, but I think after hearing from all the members of the committee that spoke tonight, I think this is your night of redemption. I don't think you guys had a hidden agenda. I think you reported what you felt was correct. I don't think the Raftels report and all you guys who come from different professional backgrounds can all be wrong. There's a lot of truth in what you said. And like Councilman Orlando said, I'd like to see written responses from the city on each of the 16 recommendations on why or why not we're going to implement it or advise us to implement it. That's really all I've got right now. I'd like to see the responses, and then we can make the body as a whole then can make an informed decision on which way we want to move forward. I never was a fan of the 3230 plan, and personally, I'd like to see it gone. But that's just me individually. But again, thank you guys very much.
All right. Member Perez?
Thank you, Mayor. Reiterate, I appreciate all your effort. I would say I have a personal relationship with at least 5 of the members on the committee, which inherently I trusted a lot of what was going to come out of the report, though I did expect different answers to come out from it. I'm glad to see that there is not just a consistency to what they're saying, but there's a unanimous consistency to what they're saying. And even though my thoughts of what was going to come from this report and come from this ad hoc committee, which I'll honestly assess I was not initially supportive of, I believe that us as a body should default to their recommendations as we move forward. Of all the recommendations that y'all are pushing through, whether y'all give us a direct recommendation of how to move forward, or you're at least pushing us in a certain direction, I think our default posture as we move forward is to adhere to what the ad hoc committee the direction the ad hoc committee has given us. Otherwise, to be honest, it was just a waste of their time and a waste of ours. I would say, look, I kind of want to break things down somewhat differently, because I see this as really, they're themed under the same umbrella, but they're really 3 different issues from my perspective. We have the issue of the arrearage, we have the issue of staffing and culture, and we have the issue of the meter competency. And I think all of them can be dealt separately, but we can fix one and still have problems in the other. And what we're kind of dealing with is how do we fix everything? And there's not going to be a fix of everything. And there's certainly not going to be one magic bullet that fixes everything, since they're 3 categorically separate problems with categorically separate issues that have caused those problems. So I still struggle to categorize all of these under the same umbrella, though they're themed the same. They all relate to utility billing, particularly water billing. So let me approach these separately. With respect to the arrearage, look, we had people who supported 3230 for good reason. We had people who did not for good reason. I can tell you that I didn't like any of the plans because none of the plans were perfect. So 3230 was as close to what we had at the time, the best approach to get us to get the consumption build with the tools that we were told we had available to us without sending a large bill to everybody in the city that nobody would understand the reasons why. So we, again, as I'd said in our last meeting where we discussed this, I think we had three separate options. Either we completely say no to any of it. We just waste away what could be at minimally $6 million, which was not appetizing to anybody here. We try and collect it all at once, which was not appetizing. We find somewhere in the middle. We're going to still work somewhere in the middle. I believe that is the best approach because as much as we are educated on this issue, the vast majority of the citizens out there are not, and we send them one big bill that says you owe us an extra $100. One, it's going to piss them off, and two, it's going to confuse the hell out of them. It's going to make the situation worse. The problem we have with the 3230 plan is we're flying blindly. We don't know what the arrearage is. And so we have no other alternative other than to extend the amount that we are bringing into the system on the reads, because we know we're behind on the reads. We know what we're bringing in on the reads, and then bill for that incremental, a couple of days incrementally. I think gravitating to Chairman Sabo's comment, maybe, I don't know if it's a full pause of the 3230 plan, but at some point we just need to find a way to get a third party to give us an audit and tell us what the arrearage is. Whether it's a 2-penny audit to say we definitely know this is the exact value, whether that's feasible with the software that we have, or we have them evaluate bill by bill, go through and say this is average bill for average house and average area. And if we estimate that out for 45 days, this is what we estimate these average homes to be. We average that out to every bill cycle that or every customer that we have, and then there's a value. And we just say, you know what, maybe that's our value. We divide that up into a swallowable amount of days or months and say we're going to do this over 12 months, and it'll be an extra $5 or $10 on their bill, and we just say that clears it out, and then we are only billing you now from here on out to what you have. I don't know if that's feasible, but right now the problem we have with the arrearage is we don't know what value we're trying to come up with. So we're trying to do this middle of the road effort where we can't really see exactly what we're trying to accomplish. Ms. Hewitt, I assume you have a response to that?
I'm just listening to you. I will when you're done.
Fair enough. But I think, at this point, we've been kind of piddling around as best we can without even knowing where the end road is. Maybe we need to take the recommendations of the committee and say, look, let's find the end road first. Does that mean we pause the 3230 plan or just continue on with it until we get that end road and accept that there's still some imperfections until that period? I mean, I think that's something we can discuss at the next meeting. Personally, I would say if we all as a body don't want to move with the 3230 plan, then we just pause it until we can come up with a plan that's better. There's no point in us acknowledging the system is imperfect and we don't like it and continuing with it. So it's either that or we just say, look, let's just wipe the slate clean and start over. Since the ad hoc committee is not recommending that we not attempt the best effort to collect the money that we are owed for the consumption that people have used, then I think that we try and find that path where we know the value and trying to collect on a value that is known. The second is the staffing and culture issue. I do think that I don't assign motive. I rarely find that productive, but there still does seem to be some sort of perspective of there's a customer service issue. Perhaps we need to work with or have our staff work with some policies and some recommendations, some paths forward where we're being a little bit more sympathetic and assuming that our customers are right before we give them something that is going to cost them money to resolve something that may be on our end. I think part of that is our staffing level. We need to give them more support, something we spoke about on Saturday. Our budgetary item right now is one utility billing specialist for roughly 50 grand. Based on the report and what y'all are seeing or what Ref Tallis has said, we have less staff per capita or per customer than customer cities. Oh, I'm sorry, it's the reverse.
More. Reverse.
Okay. I mean, perhaps it's still a staffing issue. Perhaps it's maybe competency with the pay grade. Perhaps it's if we add a couple of part-time assistants to try and get us caught up, that maybe that can get us there. I'm not sure. I think at very least we'll add this utility billing specialist, see if we can get to a point where we feel like we should have enough staff to deal with these issues as they come up with. If we feel we're there now with this additional staff member, then and we're okay with staff, then let's move forward. But let's give them some better direction provided to them by us about how we want them to interact with our customers. What I've advocated for, or what I've not advocated, that's not the right word. What I proposed is, do we have a budgetary item where we say, hey, we think that you may have a leak. We've got a sum of money where we'll pay for a plumber to come out there and inspect and see if we can detect a leak and what side of the meter it may be on at no cost to the customer, and at least give them some advice. It's like, we know why there's an issue here. Now it's on you because it's on your side of the meter. It's on you to fix it.
Yeah.
We have had somebody independent that comes up and says, it's definitely not on the city side, it's on your side, as opposed to telling them, no, you must have a leak and go spend $100 on a plumber. I don't know that there's a simple solution to that, but that's an option. The other one is the meter competency. Kind of following with the recommendations of the committee, I do think that possibly we need to go in a different direction. If we don't trust the information that we're getting back from our consultants from when we pull the meters, if we don't feel like what the readings that we're providing are something that we can have a high level of competency in, then let's move in a different direction. If that was not unanimous to the committee, then I'd say, well, look, let's not change direction. But the committee uniformly believes that there is some issues with how we're testing the meters and whether there's accuracy there and whether we're getting the best advice of whether a meter needs to be replaced or not. Then perhaps we should follow their lead, find another vendor that has a more accurate testing measure, and proceed there. But I think we still need to categorize these separately and address them separately and try and solve them independently, and not let the issues of one stumble upon the solutions of the other.
Right. Ms. Hewitt?
I don't want to interrupt you.
I was done. I was waiting on you.
Okay. It's not a real complicated mathematical equation to calculate your arrearage. The committee worked with Ms. Massey. We developed a reconciliation plan. I think you all have been privy to it. I'm 45 days behind. You know what my meter read is because of the date that I'm 45 days behind. Go read my meter tomorrow. That's my arrearage plus one base rate. That simple.
It's pretty simple. And
real simple.
Ms. Hewitt, because it's probably in here, but the subcommittee that was looking directly at the meters, go ahead and name who those committee members were.
I'm sorry, say that again to me.
The subcommittee that was looking into the meters.
The subcommittee that worked on the meters was Jimmy Davis, Ralph King, Patrick O'Day, and myself.
Okay. probably the 4 people with direct experience in meters were on that subcommittee, and which again goes to, I think the competency of what you did in the report from the subcommittee's standpoint. So wanted to highlight that.
And when we talked about the meter testing, we witnessed it, and it was an immediate recognition that we're not properly testing our meters. So,
And that's coming from somebody who's already left the meeting who tests meters every day.
Yeah.
yeah.
So would it, as a member of the subcommittee, and again, my recommendation was reacting to something Chairman Sabo had said about needing a third-party auditor. But if y'all feel comfortable that we don't need a third-party auditor, that we feel, if y'all feel as a committee, we can simplify the math as basic as what you had stated and come up to something that we feel is an honest arrearage, and we can feel comfortable that when we communicate to our citizens that we're giving them the best available information or the best available information for which we're going to invest in, and use that to determine the arrearage and use that to determine on what basis we're going to collect this and over what time period. I can feel comfortable with that. If we don't need to pay another consultant, God knows we've got plenty on this issue as it is. If we don't need to pay another consultant and we can feel comfortable with a more simplified method, I'm fine with that. But I think we need to, before we move forward with an alternative to 3230, the most important thing is we need to have an assessment that we will all agree to, perfect or imperfect. This is the arrearage, and that's what we're going to move forward in collecting.
It's a good comment.
I think you'd take, I'm sorry, Mayor, I didn't know you were
go ahead.
speaking.
Go ahead, Denise.
I think you take the effort to do a drive-by and pull current meter read and do your analysis. I mean, it's a quick spin on a spreadsheet, right? You take what you had, the previous month's bill, you get the current, bada bing, you got a number, add if you're 45 days, I only owe you 1 base rate. If you're 54, you might want to talk about 2 base rates, whatever. And then take and look at that compared to what you've booked. I think that causes a great deal of angst in the city because I think they've inflated that by all the extra base rates they've put in there. And so they're going to have to figure out how they're going to reconcile that, how they write that off.
Yeah, and I think there is something we at some point when we get on the other side of the 3230 plan or whatever the methodology it is that we're going to use to collect, we have to make an acknowledgement that there's not a perfect way for us to bill because we don't have perfect months. They're not evenly divided.
Right.
So mathematically, it's impossible for us to go through and say we're only going to read on certain days and not have 2 bills a month unless you go over 30 days or 31 days. Mathematically, you'll run into, you're getting a bill on the first day and the last day. Mathematically impossible for you to avoid that. So we could either have inconsistency in when we read and when we pull the meters by saying we're only going to bill you on the 15th of every month. And
Once we get to AMI, we can do that.
And that's what I'm saying. But but what got us into this mess was that we got impatient with the people who were reporting to us that there was inconsistency in their bills. That was more dramatic. It was 26 days to 35 days, and that was because we were having difficulties with getting our staff out there to read the meters on a timely basis, but we felt like we were somewhere in there. But perhaps once we get on the other side of that, we either we accept that there's going to be 2 bills a month, we deal with that, and we know it's imperfect, but that's the imperfection we're accepting, or we say we bill each cycle on certain days, and the imperfection we're accepting is they're going to have some moderate inconsistency. In February, they're going to have a low bill. In the 31-day months, they're going to have a higher bill. Right. We communicate that with them.
Right.
Yeah, it might have been cheaper to have hired some contract meter readers.
And I'd like to measure our time left. We do have a workshop behind with the group, and we've got to change the room out to get our planning and zoning commission set in here. I also want to make sure, Councilmember Owens, if you've got anything to add as far as questions or comments.
Well, I think a lot of things been added, but Sabo, I appreciate you being back and taking control of this, and you had some good folks working with you, and I appreciate that. Good to have you back in the chamber again. But I did find out something. I'm in cycle 11. My wife asked me last week, she said this will be the third check I wrote in 2 months. I said, well, pay it, let's go ahead and get it, but it's not due to the end of the month, I guess, or something. I don't know. But, a lot of time and effort has been spent into putting all this report together. And I think, from the limited time that I've seen this, that there's a lot of good information in it and a lot of concern, and being sitting up here for the number of years that I've been on here, I don't, for 15 years, I don't know if we ever had a water problem or not. I heard people come up and complaining about a high water bill, but nothing to this magnitude. For me, I'm just ready for it to get over with. I'm tired of it. And the mayor was right. I was the one that said, hey, let's just forget the money it's owed and let's do it. We still went through the year and had money left over in our water and wastewater side of it. And I don't know if the meter's going to solve it or not. We've spent $10 million on meters so far through there, and from Badger, and they're the only sole source for the meter that it is. And I'll question that if something went wrong. Do we have to go out and spend $10 more million for additional meters? So I'm hoping, that we get to a point that we can get this taken care of. It's just, I don't know, it's just kind of a thorn in our side sitting up here. And we had many people come up and chew us out on that. But it's come to fruition now that we've had people coming in from the outside. And I think that's one of the best things that ever happened is how's the residents to come in, and speak to us more about this. And let's get to the bottom of it. Like I said, I'm tired of it. And whatever needs to be done, needs to be done. If it's a recommendation that comes in this report, let's do what the recommendation says. And let's do it. Let's get it over with. And try it. If the 3032 is bad, let's change it. Let's go ahead and get what needs to be done to get this back and let the citizens, and which we're all citizens here too, to come to a full understanding and get something taken care of. I mean, we're spending a ton of money on stuff like this. And this next year in the 22 budget, it's 9% increase in the water rates. So, I mean, that's the big concern that I have. And I don't know what it takes to get by it, but I think, from the report and the time and effort that was put into it, I think it would be foolish not to come in and try to make some changes on that by using that. And Ralph tell us to report at the same time. We need to do that and just get to the bottom. I think, not only the residents, we're tired of it sitting up here too. It's an issue we've been fighting for a long time. So I appreciate y'all coming in and doing this and spending time with us and going through this headache that we're all going through and all the citizens are going through, and it's time to be relieved. Appreciate your support on all of this.
And I'll wrap up the comments. If council will indulge, I'll work with staff and see if we can get everything back to us sooner rather than later. Obviously, budget is upon us, but the staff has done, their work on the budget over the last several months, and now it's in our hands. And so I think staff can get this reconciled and back to us sooner rather than later. If you'll give me the opportunity to work with staff, we'll get all these recommendations in the matrix kind of back. And I want to close with this.
I'm still in the queue.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Hernandez, go ahead.
I'll be very brief. So I just wanted to first say that I think the report that was submitted was very thoughtfully prepared, and so I'm thankful for that for all the members of the committee and the subcommittee. I don't disagree with anything that you've gotten here that I've read thus far and understand. I wanted to maybe touch on and just combine what Member Owens and Member Perez talked about as the other aspects that we have to consider on the dais that maybe the committee members don't have to take into consideration directly. And so, looking at kind of the sentiment online and how that's fanned by conflating, I think, several issues. So whether it's the new meters, AMI, billing practices, arrearages, so forth. So personally, just to give very clear, feedback to the committee and to staff, I don't feel necessarily comfortable moving forward with any of the changes just yet, although I do think that there's good content here, and making any changes 30 until the aspects of UB are all online and up to par. I think that it sounds like we're moving in the right direction, and staff can nod their head, just know I'm not there, so I don't know which way you nod, but sounds like we're moving in the right direction. We'll have the tools that we've kind of been promising the residents soon. I think that's going to make things a lot clearer, a lot more transparent. So I wasn't a proponent of 30 in the beginning, but I know it's manageable, at least for now, until these other components are fixed. We can, I think, unbind the multiple twigs of this big bundle that people kind of misinterpret as the issue. And then I did have one quick question just for clarity, Mayor, and then I'll be done with my comments. Mr. Davis had mentioned, and I think it was also in the report, but I don't remember exactly where, that the committee had requested some documents that they were then advised that those documents were destroyed, but then I think I remember that they were not destroyed. Can you give me some clarity on just kind of what those documents were and if they were? Because I think that it was said that they would be provided, but I don't know if it said that they were provided. I'm unclear on what those specific files or documents were. And that concludes my comments, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, real quick, and I think the documents were recreated, if I'm correct. But Mr. Davis is at the podium.
Correct.
Right.
So what we had asked for were, when you upload meter reads into New World, it generates some reports afterwards, and there's some error and exception reports that show you here's all the accounts, all the meters with errors. And we had asked for 6 months of those because we wanted to look into some specific months to see if certain data identified as an error. And that's when we were told that in February, mid-February, that a decision was made by UB staff, and we confirmed with city attorney, it wasn't vetted through him, that all historical reports that was on SharePoint were deleted, and then they would start over at that point as to save space or something. When it escalated to the city attorney, who I believe had to send a letter to the state of Texas about it, I think you said you were, the CFO said, no, wait, we can get those reports out of the system. For the committee, the concern was we asked for them and we were told, yeah, we don't have them anymore. We deleted them. Sorry, too bad, so sad. And then when we raised the issue, it escalated. It's like, oh, okay, wait, yeah, we can get them to you. So that was a little problem.
Yeah. And Mayor, just so I don't lose the thread from the Mayor Pro Tem, I agree with the Mayor Pro Tem. We need to make some changes. Yeah. I just don't want to be like the idiots who first did this and ran into a change without looking at all the implications, because the revenue is bonded. There are other elements. I understand the need for expediency, and we're also in the budget cycle, but the recommendations were to have a third party, possibly auditor, to break ties on certain things. And I just don't want to be the idiots that go run into something right away just for the sake of doing that. So patience, a little more. I agree with Mr. Hernandez. We're on the way, but I would like more thoughtful consideration and possibly an outside person to look at our strategy.
Good deal. And I'll leave it with these 4 guiding principles that the committee established. I think it's important for this meeting, for our public who may be watching in, for any member of the public who may watch this, after the fact. And I believe these are guiding principles that we definitely need to adopt and make a part of our core principles in utility billing. Number 1, nobody should be billed for something they don't owe. Number 2, there's a certain amount of money that account holders owe that is due to the city. Number 3, fear of what the future may hold. Bonds, budget cuts, rate increases should not keep the committee from doing what is right. It should be from the council doing what is right if we adopt these. And number 4, rebuilding public trust is paramount. If the committee makes decisions that don't accomplish that, then we have failed. Same goes for this council. So I wanted to end with that. I wanted to tell, again, each one of you, thank you for the 6 months of effort that you've put into this. You have truly put your heart and soul into it. You were chosen for reasons. And I think tonight, not only the council, but also the public at large can see the reasons why the 8 of you were set aside to do this task. It is important work. It's important to build back trust in this system, and you can't do that unless you have direct involvement and direct engagement with the citizens, and you have given that to us. Now it's our job to take this recommendation and take this report. We have to wrestle with it, and we have to either adopt, modify, change. We have to do something, and it's my word to you guys that we will get to that point. I do agree we don't need to have unintended consequences and necessarily rush, but at the same time, we don't need to take forever to get there as well. So with that, I, again, appreciate your time and efforts tonight. I'm going to call this workshop adjourned at 7:08. And if we could, do a 10-minute turnaround, and we'll get back to our planning and zoning.